Why does a heart cling to what destroys it? Why does a soul, frail and trembling, cradle a thing that whispers ruin in the shadowed folds of Middle-earth, where mountains groan and rivers murmur secrets? One creature's tale echoes this question louder than any other. Gollum, once Sméagol a name, now half forgotten, crawled through the ages, his life tethered to a single gleaming torment, the One Ring. To ask why Gollum craved the ring above life itself is to peer into the abyss of desire, to trace the threads of a soul unraveled by its own hunger. It is to walk for a moment in the footsteps of a creature who was both victim and villain, both pitiable and perilous. Let us begin then, not with the ring's fire, but with the silence before it came, a silence that held Sméagol's world fragile as a leaf before the storm. In the beginning, before the ring's whisper found him, Sméagol was a hobbit-like creature of the riverlands, dwelling among the reeds and willows of the Gladden fields. His world was small, woven of simple joys, the ripple of water against a boat's hull, the laughter of kin, the warmth of a fire under starlight. He was not a hero, nor was he destined for greatness. He was ordinary, his heart a quiet pool stirred only by the small currents of daily life. Yet within that ordinariness lay a seed of restlessness, a curiosity that glinted like a fish beneath the water's surface. Sméagol loved things that shone, trinkets, secrets, the gleam of something hidden. It was not greed, not yet, but a flicker of longing, a crack in the soul, through which something darker might one day slip. The day the ring came to him was no accident, though it seemed so. Fishing with his cousin Sméagol, Sméagol glimpsed a flash in the river's depths, a golden light that called to him sharper than any hunger. Sméagol too saw it, and it was he who dove into the silt and emerged with the ring in his hand. In that moment, the world shifted. The ring was no mere trinket. It was a presence, a will, a voice without sound. It did not speak in words, but in promises, power, knowledge, a place above others. To Sméagol, it was the answer to a question he had not yet asked. To Sméagol, it was a curiosity, a thing to be admired, but not possessed. And so the first tragedy unfolded not in the clash of armies, but in the quiet betrayal of kin. Sméagol's heart turned. The ring's whisper fanned that flicker of longing into flame, and he demanded the ring as his own. Sméagol refused, and in that refusal, Sméagol saw not his cousin, but an obstacle, a thief of what was rightfully his. The struggle was brief, brutal, final. Sméagol's hands closed around Sméagol's throat, and the river, witness to their bond, became witness to its end. Sméagol's life slipped away, and Sméagol took the ring, hiding the body among the reeds. In that act, he crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The ring was his, but at a cost he could not yet fathom. The question we must ask is not why Sméagol killed for desire, can twist any heart, but why, having gained the ring, he could not let it go. The ring was no ordinary object. Forged in the fires of Mount Doom by Sauron the Dark Lord, it was a vessel of his will, a shard of his malice. It did not merely glitter, it sang a song that burrowed into the soul. To hold it was to feel chosen, to sense a destiny greater than oneself. Yet that destiny was a lie, a trap woven by Sauron, to bind all who bore it. The ring promised everything, strength, invisibility, dominion, but delivered only servitude. It was a mirror that showed not the truth, but the shadow of one's deepest desires. For Sméagol, whose heart had always sought the gleam of hidden things, the ring was the ultimate secret, the one treasure that could never be shared. In the days that followed, Sméagol returned to his people, but he was no longer one of them. The ring granted him invisibility, a power he used to spy, to steal, to unravel the small trusts that bound his community. He became a shadow among them, his laughter replaced by a guttural cough, his name twisted into Gollum, a sound like the choking of a stream. His kin cast him out, not knowing the full measure of his deeds, but sensing the wrongness that clung to him. Alone, he fled to the mountains, to the roots of the misty peaks, where darkness offered solace. There, in the cold and silence, the ring became his world. What is it to love a thing that hates you? Gollum's bond with the ring was no mere obsession. It was a marriage of sorts, a covenant sealed in blood and betrayal. He called it my precious, a term of endearment that masked a deeper truth. The ring was his master. It fed on his life, stretching his years beyond their natural span, but thinning him, hollowing him, until he was little more than a husk, animated by need. His body withered. His eyes grew large and luminous, his voice a rasp of longing. Yet he could not cast it aside. To do so would be to cast away himself, for the ring had become the center of his being, the axis around which his soul turned. This is the first mystery of Gollum's craving, the ring's power to redefine the self. It did not merely possess him, it became him. Every thought, every act bent toward its preservation. He hid it in the deepest caves, guarding it with a ferocity that bordered on worship. He spoke to it, caressed it, swore oaths to it. In the silence of those caverns, where no other voice answered, the ring was his companion, his confidant, his god. Yet it was a cruel god, offering no comfort, only the endless demand to be held, to be kept, to be loved above all else. And Gollum obeyed, because to disobey was to face the void of his own making. Let us pause here for a moment to consider the weight of such a choice. Gollum was not Sauron, born of malice, nor was he a wizard steeped in lore. He was small, broken, a creature of simple origins. His fall was not the stuff of epic tragedy, but of quiet, creeping despair. To crave the ring above life itself was to choose a half-life, a shadow existence, where joy, love, and hope were sacrificed on the altar of possession. Yet in that choice, Gollum mirrors something universal, something human. For who among us has not, at some point, clung to a thing, a memory, a grudge, a dream that promised salvation, but delivered only pain? The caves beneath the misty mountains were Gollum's refuge, but also his prison. There time lost its meaning. Days bled into years, years into centuries. The ring sustained him, but it did not nourish him. He ate what he could: fish, bats, the occasional goblin, but his true sustenance was the ring's presence. It was both his torment and his tether, the chain that bound him to life, even as it drained him of it. In those depths, he forgot the taste of bread, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of a friend's voice. He forgot Sméagol, or tried to. The name lingered like a wound that would not heal. Yet even in that darkness, Gollum was not alone. The ring was a beacon, its power a signal that drew the eye of Sauron. The Dark Lord, though weakened, was not destroyed. From his tower in Mordor, he sought the ring, and his servants roamed the world in search of it. Gollum, hidden though he was, could not escape the shadow of his master. The ring's will was Sauron's will, and it worked upon Gollum, ceaselessly urging him to act, to move, to bring it closer to its true owner. But Gollum resisted, not out of defiance, but out of greed. He wanted the ring for himself, to keep it forever in the dark. This tension between the ring's will and Gollum's desire defines the second mystery of his craving. The ring was not a passive object. It was a force, a mind, a purpose. It sought to return to Sauron to fulfill its creator's design. Yet it also needed bearers, those who would carry it, protect it, until the moment was right. Gollum was both its slave and its guardian, locked in a paradox of servitude and rebellion. He could not wield the ring as Sauron did, nor could he destroy it. He could only hold it, and in holding it, be held. In the silence of the caves, Gollum's mind fractured. He spoke to himself, arguing, pleading, cursing. One voice was Sméagol's faint and fading a memory of the hobbit he had been. The other was Gollum's sharp and cunning, the creature forged by the ring. These voices battled endlessly, each claiming the right to exist. Sméagol longed for freedom, for release, for a return to the riverlands. Gollum sneered at such weakness, insisting that the ring was all that mattered, all that could ever matter. This inner war was no mere madness. It was the ring's work, splitting his soul to ensure its dominion. What does it mean to lose oneself? For Gollum, it was not a sudden fall, but a slow erosion, a wearing away of all that made him human. The ring did not force him to love it. It seduced him, offering just enough to keep him bound. It gave him invisibility, but at the cost of his presence in the world. It gave him long life, but at the cost of its meaning. It gave him power, but only over himself, and even that was a lie. The ring's greatest cruelty was its ability to make Gollum complicit in his own destruction, to make him choose his chains again and again. Yet even in this descent, there were moments of grace, fleeting and fragile. In the darkness, Gollum would sometimes sing soft broken songs of rivers and reeds, of a life before the ring. These were Sméagol's songs, remnants of a heart that still beat, however faintly. They were not enough to save him, but they were enough to remind us that he was not wholly lost. To crave the ring above life itself was to choose death, but it was also to cling to a twisted form of hope, a hope that the ring could fill the void it had created. As the centuries passed, Gollum's world shrank to the size of his obsession. The caves were his kingdom, the ring his crown. He knew every tunnel, every crevice, every shadow. He was both king and prisoner, ruler of nothing but his own misery. Yet the ring's will was restless, and it would not let him remain hidden forever. A new bearer was coming, a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, whose arrival would shatter Gollum's solitude and set him on a path he could not foresee. But that is a tale for another hour. For now, let us linger in the caves with Gollum and his precious, and ask again, why did he crave the ring above life itself? The answer lies not in the ring's power, but in its promise. It offered Gollum a story in which he was not small, not ordinary, not forgotten. It gave him a purpose, however false, and in that purpose he found a reason to endure. To let go of the ring would be to let go of that story, to face the truth of his own emptiness. And so he held on, through pain, through loss, through the slow death of his soul. He held on, because to release it was to release himself, and that was a terror too great to bear. In Gollum's craving, we see the shadow of our own desires, the things we cling to, though they harm us. His story is not one of triumph, but of warning, a reminder that what we love shapes us, and what we refuse to release defines us. As we leave him, now crouched in the dark, whispering to his precious, let us carry this question forward. What is our own ring, and what will it cost us to let it go? The tale continues unbroken, a song that winds through the ages, waiting for its next verse. The caves beneath the misty mountains held Gollum like a clenched fist, their darkness a mirror to the shadow within him. The one ring, his precious, gleamed in the silence, its golden light, the only star in his sunless world. Yet even in that isolation, the world beyond stirred, and fate, like a river, seeking its course, would not let him remain still. The question lingers, why did Gollum crave the ring above life itself? To answer, we must follow him beyond the caves into a world that had forgotten him, where his hunger would meet new trials, new voices, and a new bearer whose coming would unravel his solitude. Let us walk, then, through the shadows, tracing the path of a creature bound by desire, and seek the deeper currents of his longing. Gollum's centuries in the dark had made him a creature of habit, his life a ritual of survival and obsession. He fished in the black pools, his fingers deft as they seized blind fish. He crept through goblin-haunted tunnels, his invisibility a shield against their crude blades. He whispered to the ring, his voice a tangle of love and loathing, as if it might answer. Yet the ring was silent, its will a pressure, rather than a voice urging him to guard it, to keep it, to let no other claim it. In this Gollum was faithful not out of loyalty, but because the ring had woven itself into the fabric of his being. To lose it would be to lose himself, and so he clung to it, a drowning man clutching a stone. But the ring was not content to lie hidden. Its purpose was movement reunion with its master Sauron, whose shadow grew in the east. It was a restless thing, a betrayer of those who bore it, and Gollum, for all his cunning, could not hold it forever. The moment came, as such moments must, when a stranger entered his world, a hobbit, small and unassuming, named Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo, lost in the goblin-infested tunnels, stumbled into Gollum's domain, his presence a spark in the long night. With him came a chance, a crack, in the prison of Gollum's craving, though neither he nor Bilbo could know it then. Their meeting was no grand clash, but a quiet encounter heavy with consequence. Gollum, sensing an intruder, stalked Bilbo through the dark, his eyes like lanterns, his mind sharp with suspicion. Bilbo, unaware of the ring's presence in his pocket found by chance in the tunnels, was a mystery to Gollum, a threat to his precious. Yet Gollum did not strike at once. Instead, he proposed a game of riddles, a contest rooted in the traditions of his hobbit-like kin, a flicker of Sméagol's lost world. The stakes were dire. If Bilbo won, Gollum would show him the way out. If Gollum won, Bilbo would be his prey. The riddles they traded were like shards of light in the gloom, each one a glimpse into their minds. Bilbo's were simple, drawn from the Shire's fields and hearths, Windeg's time. Gollum's were darker, born of his long exile teeth, darkness, the cold of the deep. Yet in their exchange, something stirred in Gollum, a memory of Sméagol, of a time when words were shared, not hoarded. For a moment, he was not merely a predator, but a creature capable of play, of connection. This was the first crack in his craving, the first hint that the ring's hold was not absolute. But it was fleeting, for the game turned on a question that was no riddle. What have I got in my pocket? Bilbo's question, asked in desperation, was no true riddle, but Gollum, bound by the rules of their game, could not answer. In that moment he realized the truth. Bilbo had the ring. The discovery was a wound, a betrayal deeper than any he had known. The ring, his precious, had abandoned him, slipping from his grasp to another's. Gollum's cry was not merely anger, but anguish, a wail that echoed through the caves. He lunged at Bilbo, his hands clawing for what was his, but Bilbo, aided by the ring's invisibility, slipped away, leaving Gollum alone in the dark. What does it mean to lose what defines you? For Gollum, the loss of the ring was not merely theft, but amputation. It was as if his heart had been torn from his chest, leaving a void that screamed with absence. He wept, he raged, he cursed the thief who had taken his precious. Yet even in his grief, he could not turn away from it. The ring's hold was not in its presence, but in its promise, and that promise lingered, a ghost that haunted his every thought. He could no more abandon it than he could abandon himself, and so, driven by a need sharper than hunger, Gollum left the caves, venturing into a world he had forsaken centuries before. The world beyond the mountains was vast, bright, and cruel. Gollum, a creature of shadow, shrank from its light, his eyes burning under the sun's gaze. He moved by night, skulking through forests and fens, his body frail, but his will unbroken. The ring called to him, a distant song that tugged at his soul, guiding him toward Bilbo, toward the Shire, toward a destiny he could not escape. Yet the world was no longer the riverland of his youth. It was a place of peril where orcs roamed men, built towers, and the shadow of Sauron grew. Gollum, small and alone, was a speck in this tapestry, yet his craving gave him strength, a purpose that burned brighter than fear. His journey was not a straight path, but a wandering driven by instinct and obsession. He followed the ring's pull, but also his own cunning, avoiding the servants of Sauron, who sought the same prize. He ate what he could, raw fish, stolen scraps, the occasional unwary creature. His body withered further, his skin clinging to bones, his voice a hiss of defiance. Yet he endured because the ring was not merely an object, but a story in which he was the hero, the rightful owner, the one who would reclaim what was his. This was the third mystery of his craving, the ring's ability to craft a narrative, a lie that gave meaning to his suffering. As Gollum roamed, the world began to change. Sauron's power grew, his eye searching for the ring. The Dark Lord's servants captured Gollum, drawn by his connection to the ring, and brought him to Mordor. There, in the shadow of Barad-dûr, he was tortured, his body broken, his mind laid bare. Sauron sought the ring's location, and Gollum, under pain, revealed fragments of Truth-Bagan's Shire. Yet even in torment, Gollum's craving held. He did not betray the ring's full path, not out of loyalty to Bilbo, but because the ring was his, and he would not let another claim it, not even Sauron. This was the fourth mystery, the ring's power to inspire defiance even against its own master. Released from Mordor, Gollum was a shadow of a shadow, his body scarred, his mind fractured. Yet the ring's call was undimmed, and he followed it, driven by a need that transcended pain. He crossed mountains, rivers, and wastelands, his path converging with that of Frodo Baggins, Bilbo's heir, and the new ring-bearer. Their meeting in the wilds near the Dead Marshes was a collision of fates, a moment where Gollum's craving met its greatest test. Frodo, burdened by the ring, was no mere thief to Gollum, but a mirror, a hobbit like Sméagol once was struggling under the same weight. Frodo's companion Samwise Gamgee saw Gollum as a monster, a threat to be driven off. But Frodo, touched by pity, saw something else, a creature bound by the same chain that now bound him. He called Gollum by his old name, Sméagol, and in that naming stirred a spark of the hobbit he had been. For a moment, Gollum hesitated, his eyes softening, his voice less harsh. Frodo's kindness was a light in the dark, a reminder of a world before the ring. Yet kindness alone could not break the ring's hold. Gollum's craving was a fire that had burned too long, its roots too deep. He agreed to guide Frodo and Sam to Mordor, to the ring's source. But his heart was divided, Sméagol yearning for redemption, Gollum plotting betrayal. This division was the fifth mystery of his craving, the ring's ability to split the soul, to set self against self. As they journeyed, Gollum's inner war grew fiercer. Sméagol, awakened by Frodo's trust, longed to serve, to be free, to find a way back to the light. Gollum, bound by the ring, schemed to reclaim it, to kill if he must. Their path through the dead marshes Ithilien and the stairs of Cirith Ungol was a descent into this conflict, each step a battle between hope and despair. Gollum led them true, avoiding Sauron's patrols, but his eyes never left the ring, hanging around Frodo's neck, its weight a constant temptation. In Ithilien, a moment of grace came fragile as a dewdrop. Frodo and Sam, resting by a stream, shared their meager food with Gollum. He ate hesitantly, his hands trembling, his voice soft. For an instant, he was Sméagol again, a hobbit by a river, not a creature of caves. Frodo's gaze, free of judgment, held him, and Gollum's face softened, a smile flickering like a forgotten dream. But Sam's suspicion broke the spell, his harsh words driving Gollum back into himself. The moment passed, and with it, a chance for redemption. The ring's hold tightened, whispering that trust was a lie, that only it was true. What is it to stand at the edge of salvation and turn away? Gollum's craving was not merely for the ring, but for the certainty it offered, the story it told. To let go would be to face the unknown, to risk a self he no longer recognized. And so he chose the ring again and again, each choice a step deeper into shadow. Yet Frodo's pity lingered, a thorn in his heart, a reminder that he was not wholly Gollum, not yet. As they climbed the stairs of Cirith Ungol toward the lair of Shelob, Gollum's plan took shape. He would lead Frodo into the spider's trap, reclaim the ring, and be free. But freedom for Gollum was a lie. The ring had woven a promise it could never keep. The ascent to Cirith Ungol was a journey into darkness, both without and within. Gollum's steps were sure, his knowledge of the paths unmatched, but his heart was a storm. Sméagol's voice grew fainter, Gollum's louder, until the plan was set. He led Frodo and Sam into the tunnels, knowing Shelob waited her hunger a match for his own. Yet even as he betrayed them, a part of him wept, a part that remembered Frodo's kindness, that longed for another way. This was the sixth mystery, the ring's power to make betrayal inevitable, to turn even the smallest hope against itself. In the tunnels, Gollum vanished, leaving Frodo and Sam to face Shelob's terror. His plan succeeded. In part, Frodo was stung, bound, and taken, but Sam's courage thwarted him. Sam drove Shelob back, took the ring, and stood guard over Frodo's body. Gollum, watching from the shadows, saw the ring in Sam's hands and attacked his craving, a madness that blinded him to all else. But Sam, fueled by loyalty, overpowered him, and Gollum fled wounded into the dark. The ring was gone again, and with it, his last chance to reclaim it. Yet Gollum did not stop. The ring's call was a fire in his bones, driving him to follow Frodo and Sam toward Mordor, toward Mount Doom. His body was broken, his mind a ruin, but his craving endured a force stronger than flesh or reason. He trailed them through the wastelands, a ghost in their shadow, his eyes fixed on the ring. In this pursuit, he was both hunter and hunted, for Sauron's eye was ever watchful, and the ring's presence drew danger like a storm. What does it mean to chase a thing that destroys you? Gollum's journey was a pilgrimage not to salvation, but to annihilation. The ring was his god, his torment, his reason to exist. To crave it above life itself was to choose a path where life had no meaning without it. Yet in that choice, Gollum revealed a truth. Desire unchecked becomes a prison, and the things we love can become our chains. As he followed Frodo and Sam, his story neared its climax, a moment where craving, pity, and fate would collide. The song continues, its notes sharp with sorrow, leading us toward a revelation that is not yet complete. The wastelands of Mordor stretched before Gollum like a sea of ash, their jagged peaks and smouldering fissures a mirror to the ruin within him. The One Ring, though now beyond his grasp, sang to him still its call, a pulse that drove his frail form onward. Frodo and Sam, the hobbits who bore his precious, trudged toward Mount Doom, unaware of the shadow that trailed them. Gollum, broken yet unyielding, followed his craving, a fire that consumed all else. Why did he crave the ring above life itself? To answer, we must walk with him through this final wilderness where despair and desire wove a tapestry of torment, and where the ring's power would face its ultimate test. Let us tread softly, for this is a path of anguish lit by the faint embers of a soul not wholly lost. Gollum's pursuit was no longer a journey of cunning, but of desperation. His body was a wreck, bones jutting beneath taut skin, eyes bulging with a feverish light, voice reduced to a rasp of need. The torture in Mordor had scarred him. Shelob's tunnels had wounded him, and Sam's fists had bruised him, yet none of these could quench the ring's hold. It was not merely an object, but a presence, a weight that anchored his existence. To abandon it was to abandon meaning, to face a void where Sméagol, the hobbit he had been, might stir, and that was a terror greater than death. So he followed a spectre in the ash, his every step a defiance of the world that had forsaken him. Mordor was a land of endings, its air thick with sulfur, its skies choked with smoke. The eye of Sauron burned above Barad-dûr, searching, always searching for the ring. Gollum knew its gaze had felt its weight in the dark cells of the Dark Lord's tower. He moved with care, slinking through ravines and crouching in shadows, for to be caught again was to lose the ring forever. Yet the ring itself was a beacon, its power a signal that drew Sauron's servants, orcs, Nazgûl, and worse. Gollum's craving was thus a race not only against Frodo and Sam, but against the will of the ring's true master, who sought to reclaim it and bend the world to his dominion. Frodo and Sam were no longer the hale hobbits of the Shire. The ring's burden had worn them thin, their steps heavy, their faces gaunt. Frodo, who carried it, bore the greater weight, his spirit bending under its malice. Sam, ever loyal, carried Frodo as much as their supplies, his love a shield against despair. Gollum watched them from afar, his eyes fixed on the chain around Frodo's neck, where the ring hung like a star fallen to earth. He saw Frodo's pain, and in it a reflection of his own. Frodo was not merely a thief, but a mirror, a hobbit ensnared by the same trap that had claimed Sméagol. This recognition stirred something in Gollum, a flicker of pity, but it was drowned by the louder voice of his craving. The seventh mystery of Gollum's desire was this: the ring's power to bind souls across time. Frodo's struggle was Sméagol's, their fates entwined by the ring's endless hunger. Gollum saw in Frodo not only a rival, but a shadow of his own fall, a reminder of the hobbit he might have been. Yet this kinship offered no solace, only torment, for it forced Gollum to confront the truth he had buried. The ring had not chosen him alone. It could pass to another, as it had from him to Bilbo, and now to Frodo. This was the cruelest cut of his craving. Not that the ring was his, but that it was not his alone, that it could love another as it had loved him. As they neared Mount Doom, the landscape grew harsher, the air a poison that seared the lungs. Frodo's strength waned, his steps faltering, and Sam carried him at times, a figure of quiet heroism. Gollum, trailing them, felt the ring's call grow stronger, its song a crescendo that drowned out his pain. He no longer ate, no longer rested. His body was sustained by need alone. He whispered to himself, the voices of Sméagol and Gollum locked in their endless war. Sméagol, faint but persistent, pleaded for release, for a return to Frodo's kindness, to the hope that had flickered in Ithilien. Gollum, dominant, now hissed of betrayal, of the ring's return, of a world where he would be whole again. But whole for Gollum meant only the ring, nothing more. The path to Mount Doom was a crucible, stripping away all but the essential. For Frodo, it was his mission to destroy the ring, the task he bore for the world. For Sam, it was his love for Frodo, a loyalty that defied despair. For Gollum, it was his craving, a force that had long since eclipsed his humanity. Yet even in this desolation, there were moments of fracture where Sméagol's voice broke through. One night, as Frodo and Sam slept, Gollum crept close, his hand hovering over Frodo's sleeping form. He did not strike, but touched Frodo's hand, a gesture almost tender, as if seeking not the ring, but the hobbit who had called him Sméagol. Sam woke, mistaking the act for theft, and drove Gollum off with harsh words. The moment shattered, and Gollum retreated, his chance for redemption lost to suspicion. This was the eighth mystery, the ring's ability to turn grace into betrayal. Frodo's pity had rekindled Sméagol, but the ring twisted even that light, making trust a weapon. Gollum's touch was not merely a theft, but a plea, a reaching for the self he had lost. Yet Sam's reaction, born of love for Frodo, sealed Gollum's fate, pushing him back into the dark. The ring thrived on such divisions, sowing discord to ensure its survival. Gollum, caught in its web, could no more escape than a fly in a spider's net, his every act bent to its will. The final ascent to Mount Doom was a climb through hell. The mountain loomed, its fires a beacon of destruction, its heat a lash against their skin. Frodo crawled now, his strength gone, the ring a millstone around his neck. Sam, battered but unyielding, urged him on, his voice a thread of hope. Gollum followed his body, a ruin, his mind a storm. The ring's song was deafening now, a command that drowned out all else. He knew the moment was near, the moment when the ring would be his again or lost forever. His plan was simple: wait, watch, strike when Frodo faltered. For Frodo would falter, the ring ensured it. At the cracks of doom, the heart of the mountain, the tale reached its climax. Frodo entered the chamber where the ring had been forged, its fires casting a hellish glow. Sam stood by him, urging him to cast the ring into the lava below. Gollum, hidden in the shadows, watched his breath a ragged gasp. Frodo stood at the edge, the ring in his hand, its weight, a universe of temptation. He had carried it through pain, through despair, through the shadow of death, and now, at the moment of truth, he faltered. The ring's voice, silent to others, roared in his mind, promising power, promising life, promising everything but the truth. Frodo claimed it, slipping it onto his finger, vanishing from sight. Gollum's cry was a wail of triumph and despair. The ring was alive, its power unleashed, but it was not his. He lunged from the shadows, his hands clawing for Frodo's invisible form. Sam, stunned by Frodo's betrayal, moved to stop him, but Gollum's craving gave him strength beyond his frame. He wrestled with Frodo, his fingers seeking the ring, his voice a chant of precious, precious. In that struggle, a moment of fate unfolded, not planned, not foreseen, but inevitable. Gollum's teeth closed on Frodo's finger, biting through flesh and bone, and the ring was his, again held in his bloodied mouth. For an instant, Gollum was whole. The ring was his, its light his, its story his. He danced at the edge of the abyss, his eyes alight with joy, his voice a song of victory. But the ring was a betrayer, as it had always been. In his ecstasy, Gollum lost his footing, and the mountain claimed him. He fell, the ring still in his grasp, into the fires below. The lava swallowed them both, and the ring forged in that fire was unmade. Mount Doom roared its eruption, a signal of Sauron's defeat, for without the ring, his power crumbled. Frodo and Sam fled, saved by eagles, and the world was freed. But what of Gollum? His end was no triumph, no redemption, but a revelation. The ninth mystery of his craving was its role in the world's salvation. Gollum, the ring's slave, became its destroyer, not by choice, but by the strange alchemy of fate. His craving, which had driven him to murder, to betrayal, to a half-life of torment, was the final act that broke the ring's power. Without Gollum, Frodo's failure would have doomed the world. In this, Gollum was not a hero, but a vessel, a shadow cast by the light of others' choices. Frodo's pity, Sam's loyalty, the will of a world that resisted darkness. Why did Gollum crave the ring above life itself? The answer lies in its power to redefine existence. The ring was not merely a thing, but a story, a lie that promised meaning to a soul adrift. For Gollum, it was the answer to his loneliness, his ordinariness, his fear of oblivion. It gave him a purpose, however false, and in that purpose he found a reason to endure. Yet that purpose was his undoing, for the ring's story was one of destruction, and Gollum, in loving it, became its final victim. His craving was a fire that warmed him even as it burned him, a chain he forged with every choice to hold on. In Gollum's fall, we see the shadow of our own desires. What is the ring we carry, the thing we cannot release? Is it a memory, a fear, a dream that promises salvation but delivers only pain? Gollum's story is a warning, not of evil, but of the small choices that lead to it, the choice to cling to possess, to define ourselves by what we lack. Yet it is also a tale of grace, for even in his darkness, Gollum was not beyond pity, not beyond purpose. Frodo's kindness, though it could not save him, shaped him, and in that shaping the world was saved. As the fires of Mount Doom fade, and Frodo and Sam are carried to safety, Gollum's song lingers, a melody of sorrow and truth. His craving was his prison, but also his path leading him to a moment where his brokenness served a greater whole. The tale is not yet finished, for its echoes resonate still, in the hearts of those who hear it. What does it mean to crave a thing above life? It is to lose oneself, but also to be found in ways unforeseen in the tapestry of a world that endures. The song continues its notes winding toward a horizon we cannot yet see, a revelation that waits in the silence. The fires of Mount Doom have faded their roar now, a whisper in the memory of Middle-earth. The One Ring is unmade, consumed in the molten heart from which it was forged, and with it Gollum, once Sméagol, has vanished into the abyss. His final act, a frenzied dance at the edge of oblivion, was both his triumph and his end, reclaiming his precious only to lose himself to the flames. Yet the question that has haunted us remains, why did Gollum crave the ring above life itself? To seek its answer now is to linger in the ashes of his fall, to trace the echoes of his craving through the world he left behind, and to uncover the deeper truths woven into his tale. Let us walk then through the silence that follows, where the ring's shadow lingers, and explore the mythic weight of a creature whose desire reshaped the fate of all. The destruction of the ring was a cataclysm not only for Sauron, whose power crumbled with its loss, but for the world that had bent under its shadow. The Eye of Barad-dûr fell, Mordor's towers collapsed, and the armies of orcs scattered like dust in the wind. Frodo and Sam, spared by the grace of eagles, were carried from the erupting mountain to the fields of Ithilien, where healing and honor awaited them. The world breathed again, its skies clearing, its rivers singing of hope. Yet in this moment of victory, Gollum's absence is a wound, a note missing from the song of triumph. His role in the ring's end was not one of heroism, but of necessity, a shadow cast by the light of others' choices. To understand his craving, we must look beyond his fall to the legacy he left and the truths his life unveiled. Gollum's craving was not a solitary force, but a thread in the tapestry of Middle-earth, entwined with the fates of all who touch the ring. It began with Sméagol, a hobbit-like creature of the riverlands, whose small desire for shining things became a chasm when the ring entered his life. It passed through Bilbo, whose pity spared Gollum's life, and Frodo, whose kindness stirred the fading embers of Sméagol's soul. It ended in the fires of Mount Doom, where Gollum's final act, born of greed, not grace, fulfilled a purpose he could not comprehend. His craving was a force of destruction, yet also of salvation, a paradox that reveals the 10th mystery of the ring, its power to turn even the darkest desires to the service of a greater good. In the aftermath, as Frodo and Sam recover among the Free Peoples, we must ask, what was Gollum's place in this story? He was no hero, no martyr, no figure to be sung in halls. He was a creature of loss, a soul eroded by centuries of servitude to a thing that promised everything and gave nothing. Yet his craving was not merely a personal failing, but a mirror held to the world. The ring was a temptation that touched all kings, wizards, hobbits, elves, and in each it found a weakness to exploit. For Isildur, it was pride. For Boromir, it was duty. For Frodo, it was hope. For Gollum, it was belonging, the need to be more than small, more than forgotten. His craving was the purest expression of the ring's power, unadorned by nobility or ambition, a raw hunger that laid bare the cost of desire. Let us return for a moment to Sméagol before the ring's shadow fell. He was no saint, no sage, but a creature of simple joys, fishing with kin, laughing by the river, seeking small treasures in the mud. His heart held a spark of curiosity, a love for what glittered that was not yet greed. When the ring came, it did not create this spark, but fanned it into flame, turning curiosity into obsession, love into possession. The murder of Sméagol, his cousin, was the first step into darkness, but it was not the last. Each choice to keep the ring, to hide it, to cherish it, above all else, was a brick in the prison he built for himself. This is the 11th mystery, the ring's ability to make its bearer complicit in their own enslavement, to turn choice into chain. In the caves beneath the misty mountains, Gollum's life became a ritual of devotion. He guarded the ring, spoke to it, named it my precious, as if it were a lover, a child, a god. Yet it was a cruel god, offering no warmth, only the cold promise of power. It stretched his life, but thinned it, making him a wraith, a shadow of Sméagol. His body withered, his mind fractured, yet he could not let go. To release the ring would be to release the story. It told a story in which he was not small, not alone, not nothing. This story was a lie, but it was his, and in its embrace he found a twisted comfort. The ring was his burden, but also his purpose, the center of a world that had otherwise cast him out. When Bilbo took the ring, Gollum's world shattered. The loss was not merely of an object, but of identity, of meaning. He left the caves driven by a need that burned brighter than fear, to reclaim what was his. His journey through the wilds, his capture by Sauron, his torture in Mordor were all steps in a pilgrimage to the ring. Even when Frodo became its bearer, Gollum's craving did not waver. He followed, he schemed, he betrayed, because the ring was not merely a thing, but a promise of wholeness, however false. This is the 12th mystery, the ring's power to endure, in absence to haunt the heart, even when it is gone. Frodo's pity was the one force that came close to breaking this hold. By calling him Sméagol, by offering trust, Frodo reached the part of Gollum that still remembered the riverlands, the part that longed for release. In Ithilien, when Gollum ate with the hobbits, his face softened, his hands trembled as if Sméagol might emerge. In the tunnels of Shelob, when he touched Frodo's hand, it was not theft, but yearning, a plea for connection. Yet these moments were fleeting, crushed by Sam's suspicion, by the ring's relentless whisper, by Gollum's own fear of change. The ring thrived on isolation, turning pity into betrayal, trust into trap. Gollum's betrayal of Frodo to Shelob was not merely greed, but despair, a surrender to the story the ring had written for him. At Mount Doom, when Frodo claimed the ring, Gollum's craving reached its zenith. His attack, his bite, his dance at the edge, all were acts of worship, a final offering to his precious. Yet in that moment, fate turned, and Gollum fell, taking the ring with him. His death was not redemption, but revelation, an unveiling of the ring's true nature. It was a betrayer, as it had betrayed Sauron, Isildur, and now Gollum. Its destruction was not Gollum's choice, but his consequence, a final act that freed the world, but left him as ash. This is the 13th mystery, the ring's power to destroy itself through the very desires it kindled, to make its bearers the instruments of its end. In the wake of this, we must ask, what does Gollum's craving teach us? His story is not one of triumph, but of warning, a tale carved in shadow rather than light. He was no villain in the mold of Sauron, no tyrant seeking dominion. He was small, broken, a creature whose fall began with a single choice and grew through countless others. His craving was a mirror, to the human heart, reflecting the things we cling to, memories, grudges, dreams that promise salvation but deliver pain. The ring was his god, but it was also his reflection, showing him not who he was, but who he feared to be. Nothing, no one. A whisper in the dark. Yet Gollum's tale is not without hope. His role in the ring's destruction, however unwilling, was a thread in the world's salvation. Frodo's pity, though it could not save him, shaped him, making his final act possible. Sam's loyalty, though it drove Gollum away, protected Frodo long enough for the ring to reach its end. The eagles, the armies of the West, the wisdom of Gandalf all wove together with Gollum's craving to form a pattern greater than any one thread. This is the 14th mystery, the power of even the smallest life to alter the course of the world, not through strength, but through the choices that ripple outward. To crave the ring above life itself was to choose a half-life, a shadow existence, where joy, love, and hope were sacrificed. Yet Gollum's craving was not merely destruction, but a distorted form of love, a love for what the ring promised for the story it told. In this, he is not so different from us, who has not loved a thing too fiercely, held it too tightly, feared its loss above all else. Gollum's fault was not in loving, but in letting that love define him, letting it hollow him until nothing else remained. His story asks us to look at our own desires, to question what we hold precious, and to weigh its cost. In the fields of Ithilien, as Frodo and Sam heal, the world begins to mend. The Shire will be restored. Gondor will rise under Aragorn's rule, and the elves will sail to the west, their time in Middle-earth drawing to a close. Yet Gollum's shadow lingers not as a curse, but as a question. What is the ring we carry? Is it a memory that binds us to pain, a fear that chains us to silence, a dream that blinds us to truth? Gollum's craving was his prison, but also his path leading him to a moment where his brokenness served a greater whole. His life was a tragedy, but also a necessity, a note in the song of Middle-earth that could not be unsung. Let us imagine for a moment a different ending. What if Frodo had not pitied Gollum? What if Bilbo had slain him in the caves, or Sam had driven him off for good? The ring might have reached Mount Doom, but Frodo's failure would have stood alone with no Gollum to take it from him. The world might have fallen to Sauron, or the ring might have found another bearer, another soul to corrupt. Gollum's craving, for all its horror, was the final piece in a puzzle of grace, a reminder that even the darkest paths can lead to light. This is the 15th mystery, the power of pity to shape fate, to turn even a creature like Gollum into an instrument of hope. As we linger in this moment, the song of Gollum's life grows faint, but it does not vanish. It echoes in the choices we make, the things we love, the burdens we carry. His craving was a fire that consumed him, but also a spark that lit the way for others. To crave the ring above life was to lose himself, but also to be found in ways he could not foresee in the tapestry of a world that endures. The tale is not yet complete, for its truths are timeless, winding through the ages like a river seeking the sea. Let us carry Gollum's question forward into the silence and listen for the revelation that awaits in its depths. The embers of Mount Doom have cooled, and the world of Middle-earth breathes anew. The One Ring is no more, its malice dissolved in the fires that birthed it. And with it, Gollum, once Sméagol, has passed into shadow, his final cry swallowed by the mountain's roar. The free peoples rejoice, their banners raised in Gondor's white city, their songs carried on the winds of a healing world. Frodo and Sam the hobbits, who bore the ring's burden, are honored as heroes, their names etched in tales that will echo through the ages. Yet Gollum's absence lingers a silence within the chorus, a question that haunts the heart of this victory. Why did he crave the ring above life itself? To answer, we must trace the final threads of his story, not in the flames of his end, but in the eternal truths. His life unveils truths that speak to the human soul, to the desires that bind us, and to the grace that sets us free. Let us linger then in the twilight of this tale, where Gollum's craving becomes a mirror, a song, a revelation that fades not into silence but into memory. Into the world after the ring's destruction is a tapestry rewoven. Sauron's shadow has lifted his dominion, shattered with the unmaking of his greatest weapon. The orcs flee, leaderless, into the wilds. The Nazgul perish, their wails extinguished, and Mordor itself crumbles, its towers reduced to rubble, its fires dimmed. In the west, Aragorn takes the throne of Gondor, his rule a promise of renewal. The elves, their time waning, prepare to sail to the undying lands, their grace a fading light. The Shire, though scarred, will bloom again under the care of Samwise, whose love for growing things mirrors his love for Frodo. Yet in this renewal, Gollum's story feels like a wound unhealed, a note of sorrow in the symphony of hope. His craving, which drove him to ruin, was also the key to the world's salvation, a paradox that demands we look deeper beyond the surface of his deeds to the mythic currents beneath. Gollum's life was no hero's journey, no epic of valor or sacrifice. It was a descent, a slow unraveling of a soul caught in the ring's snare. From the riverlands of the Gladden Fields, where Sméagol's simple heart first glimpsed the ring's golden promise, to the caves beneath the misty mountains, where he became Gollum, a creature of shadow and obsession, his path was one of loss. The ring did not merely tempt him, it redefined him, making itself the center of his world, the source of his meaning. To crave it above life itself was to choose a life that was no life, a half-existence, where love, joy, and connection were sacrificed for a lie. Yet this lie was powerful, a story that gave Gollum purpose, however false, and in that purpose he endured centuries of torment. Let us revisit for a moment the heart of his craving. The ring was no mere object, but a presence, a will, a voice that spoke without words. Forged by Sauron to dominate all life, it carried his malice, his hunger for control. Yet its true power lay not in force, but in seduction. It promised what each heart desired: for Isildur victory, for Gandalf wisdom, for Frodo salvation. For Sméagol it promised belonging, a place above the smallness of his world, a treasure that made him more than ordinary. This promise was a trap, a mirror that showed not truth but longing, and in its reflection, Sméagol saw a self he could not resist. The murder of Sméagol was the first step into this trap, but it was not the last. Each choice to keep the ring, to hide it, to love it, was a step deeper into its embrace, until Sméagol was no more, and Gollum was all that remained. This is the 16th mystery of Gollum's craving, the ring's power to rewrite the self. It did not merely possess him, it became him, the axis around which his soul turned. In the caves he worshipped it, calling it my precious, a term of endearment that masked its mastery. He guarded it with a ferocity that bordered on reverence, speaking to it, caressing it, swearing oaths to its golden light. Yet the ring gave nothing back, only the endless demand to be held, to be kept, to be loved above all else. Gollum obeyed not out of loyalty, but because to disobey was to face the void of his own making a void, where Sméagol's laughter, his kin, his riverlands had once lived. When Bilbo took the ring, Gollum's world collapsed. The loss was not merely of a treasure, but of identity of the story that had sustained him. He left the caves driven by a need that burned brighter than fear to reclaim what was his. His journey through the wilds, his capture by Sauron, his torture in Mordor were all acts of devotion to this story. Even when Frodo became the ring's bearer, Gollum's craving endured, pulling him through wastelands and shadows to the very heart of Mount Doom. Frodo's pity, which called him Sméagol and offered trust, was the one force that threatened this story, stirring the embers of a self long buried. Yet the ring's hold was stronger, turning pity into betrayal, trust into a trap, until Gollum's final act, biting the ring from Frodo's finger and falling into the fire, was both his victory and his annihilation. In this end, we find the 17th mystery, the ring's power to make its bearers unwitting agents of its own destruction. Gollum did not choose to destroy the ring. He sought only to possess it, to reclaim the story it told. Yet in his craving, he fulfilled a purpose greater than himself, a purpose woven by the choices of others. Bilbo's mercy, Frodo's pity, Sam's loyalty, the courage of the free peoples. Without Gollum, Frodo's failure at the cracks of doom would have doomed the world, for no other hand could have taken the ring from him. Gollum's fall was not redemption, but revelation, an unveiling of the strange alchemy of fate, where even the darkest desires can serve the light. What, then, is the meaning of Gollum's craving? It is not a tale of triumph, but of warning, a mirror held to the human condition. Gollum was no monster, no dark lord born of malice. He was small, frail, a creature of simple origins, whose fall began with a single choice and grew through countless others. His craving was a reflection of the desires that haunt us, all the need to be seen, to be remembered, to hold something that promises wholeness. The ring was his answer to this need, a false god that offered power but delivered only servitude. In loving it, Gollum lost himself, becoming a shadow of the hobbit. He had been a cautionary tale of what happens when desire becomes destiny. Yet Gollum's story is not without grace. Frodo's pity, though it could not save him, shaped him, making his final act possible. In Ithilien, when Gollum shared a meal with the hobbits, his face softened. His hands trembled, as if Sméagol might return. In the tunnels of Shelob, when he touched Frodo's hand, it was a plea for connection, not theft. These moments, fleeting though they were sparks in the dark reminders that Gollum was not wholly lost. The ring's power was great, but it was not absolute. It could not erase the soul that had once laughed by the river, that had sung songs of reeds and starlight. This is the 18th mystery, the persistence of hope, even in a heart consumed by craving, a hope that lingers like a seed beneath the ash. In the world after the ring, as Gondor rises and the Shire heals, Gollum's legacy is not one of honor, but of truth. His craving was a fire that burned him, but also a spark that lit the way for others. Without him, the ring's story would have ended differently, its shadow unbroken, its malice enduring. He was no hero, but a vessel, a broken thing, used by a greater will to mend the world. This will, which some call Ilúvatar the One, wove Gollum's craving into a larger pattern, where every choice, every fall, served a purpose beyond itself. Frodo's mission, Sam's loyalty, Aragorn's courage, Gandalf's wisdom, all were threads in this pattern, and Gollum's craving was the thread that bound them, however darkly. Let us imagine for a moment a world where Gollum had turned from the ring. What if, in Ithilien, he had chosen Frodo's kindness over betrayal? What if, in the tunnels, he had led the hobbits to safety, not Shelob's lair? Such a choice might have saved him, but it would have altered the world's fate. Frodo's failure at Mount Doom required Gollum's craving, his refusal to let go to complete the ring's destruction. This is the 19th mystery, the necessity of brokenness, the way a fractured soul can serve a whole world. Gollum's fall was not merely tragedy, but purpose, a reminder that even the smallest life, the most lost, can shape the course of ages. What does Gollum's craving teach us? It is a question that echoes beyond Middle-earth into the quiet corners of our own hearts. We all carry rings, desires, fears, memories that promise meaning but demand sacrifice. They may be small, like a grudge held too long, or vast, like a dream that blinds us to truth. Gollum's fault was not in desiring, but in letting desire define him, in choosing the ring over life, over love, over the chance to be Sméagol again. His story asks us to look at our own rings, to weigh their cost, to ask what we lose in holding them. It is a call not to perfection, but to awareness, to the courage to release what destroys us, even when it feels like part of us. Yet Gollum's tale is also a song of grace, a reminder that no one is beyond pity, beyond purpose. Frodo's kindness, though it could not save him, gave him moments of light, moments when Sméagol stirred, when the riverlands seemed not so far away. These moments were not enough to free him, but they were enough to show that freedom was possible, that the ring's hold was not eternal. In this, Gollum is a mirror to our own struggles, our own battles with the things we crave. He shows us the cost of clinging, but also the power of reaching out, of accepting the pity that others offer, of daring to be more than our desires. As the world of Middle-earth moves forward, Gollum's song fades, but it does not vanish. It lingers in the tales told by firesides, in the whispers of those who remember the ring's shadow. He is not celebrated, not crowned, but neither is he forgotten. His craving was his prison, but also his path leading him to a moment where his brokenness served a greater whole. In this, he is not so different from us, creatures of light and shadow, bound by desires, yet capable of grace. The 20th mystery is this: the power of a single life to echo through eternity, to teach, to warn, to heal, even in its fall. Why did Gollum crave the ring above life itself? It was not merely greed nor madness, but a longing for meaning, for a story that made him more than small, more than alone. The ring was his answer, his god, his chain, and in its embrace, he lost himself. Yet in losing himself, he found a place in a larger tale, a tale of pity, of sacrifice, of a world made whole. His craving was a fire that consumed him, but also a spark that lit the way. As we leave him now, his song fading into memory, let us carry his question forward. What is our ring, and what will we choose to do with it? The tale ends not in resolution, but in revelation, a truth that lives in the silence, waiting for those who listen.